Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom.
Which is peace on Yahweh's Holy Sabbath day. Welcome to our last day of Unleavened Bread, which happens to be a Shabbat as well. It is when we get down to these holy days, there are a lot of things that have to go into gear for us to be able to do these things, but it's going to be on a much greater scale. Like I said before, when we get ready to do these things in our own land, we praise Yahweh. It is always good to see our family members who can, make it from different places where they live when they come in to keep these holy days. So it really is a beautiful thing, and we're going to try and work on more things to be able to so that we can put up more pictures for our family that's spread out. But before we get started, brother, would you read the oracles and entreat the angel that stands at the door to come in and sup with us and us with him, that we may make this a holy convocation by the angel's presence?
1 Peter chapter 4, verses 7 through 11. But the end of all things is at hand. Be you therefore sober, and watch unto prayer. And above all things have fervent love among yourselves, for love shall cover the multitude of sins. Use hospitality one to another without grudging. As every man has received the gift, even so minister the same one to another, as good stewards of the manifold grace of Elohim. If any man speak, let him speak as the oracles of Elohim. If any man minister, let him do it as of the ability which Elohim gives, that Elohim in all things may be glorified through Yahshua the Mashiach, to whom be praise and dominion forever and ever. Amen. Ephesians chapter 4, verses 29 through chapter 5 and verse 4. Let no corrupt communication proceed out of your mouth, but that which is good to the use of edifying, that it may minister grace unto the hearers. And grieve not the Holy Spirit of Elohim, whereby you are sealed until the day of redemption. Let all bitterness and wrath and anger and clamor and evil speaking be put away from you with all malice. And be you kind one to another, tender-hearted, forgiving one another, even as Elohim for Yahshua's sake has forgiven you.
And that's a part of trying to become unleavened. Do we have that ability to offer the very things that we want to have? We want forgiveness. We want to be put in our rightful place with Yahweh. But do we have the ability to want that for other people? Do we have the ability to step aside of our own feelings, our own beliefs, our own things, so that it makes room for somebody else to be able to be forgiven as well? Forgiveness is just not for us in the singular part. See, as we want and desire for ourselves, there's a little bit of leaven in there when we don't make space for other people to have that same thing that we want. Go ahead.
Be you therefore followers of Elohim, as dear children, and walk in love, as the Mashiach also have loved us, and has given himself for us, an offering and sacrifice to Elohim for a sweet-smelling savor. But fornication and all uncleanness or covetousness, let it not be once named among you as become saints. Neither filthiness, nor foolish talking, nor jesting, which are not convenient, but rather giving of thanks. Ecclesiastes chapter 5, verses 1 and 2. Keep your foot when you go to the house of Elohim, and be more ready to hear than to give the sacrifice of fools, for they consider not that they do evil. Be not rash with your mouth, and let not your heart be hasty to utter anything before Elohim. For Elohim is in heaven, and you upon earth, therefore let your words be few. Exodus chapter 23, verses 20 and 21. Behold, I send an angel before you, to keep you in the way, and to bring you into the place which I have prepared. Beware of him and obey his voice. Provoke him not, for he will not pardon your transgressions.
And that's another thing that we have to get accustomed to. I have sent an angel to lead you to do these things. You are not dealing directly with Yahweh. And I think sometimes we forget that we are not dealing directly with Yahweh, our Elohim. You are dealing with Yahweh's representatives who has the right to speak in his name, even if you get spoken to. You are not dealing directly with Yahweh. And I think a lot of times it gives people that belief that they can skip or bypass certain things, believing that they're dealing directly with the creator of all things. Go ahead.
For my name is in him. Revelations chapter 3, verses 20 through 22. Behold, I stand at the door and knock. If any man hear my voice and open the door, I will come in to him and will sup with him, and he with me. To him that overcomes will I grant to sit with me in my throne, even as I have also overcame and have sat down with my Father in his throne. He that has an ear, let him hear what the Spirit says unto the churches.
All right, we're going to begin in Deuteronomy chapter 8. Deuteronomy chapter 8, and we're going to start that at verse 1. And this manna that was given to the children of Israel was the unleavened bread from heaven. And it was given for a reason to the children of Israel.
Deuteronomy chapter 8 and verse 1. All the commandments which I command you this day shall you observe to do, that you may live and multiply, and go in and possess the land which Yahweh sware unto your fathers. And you shall remember all the way which Yahweh your Elohim led you these 40 years in the wilderness, to humble you and to prove you, to know what was in your heart.
And this is the problem. See, a lot of times we don't know what's in our own heart. See, we have a thought about us, the way we think we are. But Yahweh will present situations and circumstances so to prove you, to humble you, and to so that you can see what's in your heart. Because a lot of times the way we see ourselves, it never does occur to us that Yahweh does not see us like that, and neither does other people. Go ahead.
Whether you would keep his commandments or no.
Mm-hmm.
And he humbled you and suffered you to hunger and fed you with manna.
Right. Now, these kind of things don't make sense when you're dealing in the prosperity doctrine that God wants everybody to be rich. So then when you look up and see that something has been taken from you, and Yahweh is trying to humble you to get you to a different level, and the way that Yahweh works, normally everything that is taken from you, he turn around and he give it back at another stage, if you do the things that you're supposed to do. Go ahead.
Which you kneweth not, neither did your fathers know, that he might make you know that man does not live by bread only, but by every word that proceeds out of the mouth of Yah does man live.
Right. And this is the very thing that he ended up saying to the adversary, the devil. When the adversary said, turn this stone here into bread. Instead of taking that little jousting there, he took the word right there. So the very thing that we hear in the New Testament, this is where it comes from. Yeshua's just not saying some stuff to be saying it. Him and the adversary are having a real sword fight there. So he presents one thing, and then Yeshua comes back with the word. And he's presenting the word each time the adversary tries to push him into a place. Go ahead.
Verse 4. Your raiment waxed not old upon you, neither did your foot swell these 40 years. You shall also consider in your heart, that as a man chasteneth his son, so Yahweh your Elohim chasteneth you.
And it says, if you be without chastisement, then you are bastards. That means he's not your father. He chastened his kids. So if he doesn't punish you for your doings, then you a child of the adversary of the devil. Go ahead.
Therefore you shall keep the commandments of Yahweh your Elohim, to walk in his ways and to fear him. For Yahweh your Elohim bringeth you into a good land, a land of brooks of water, of fountains and depths that spring out of valleys and hills, a land of wheat and barley and vines and fig trees and pomegranates, a land of oil, olive, and honey, a land wherein you shall eat bread without scarceness. You shall not lack anything in it, a land whose stones are iron, and out of whose hills you may dig brass. When you have eaten and art full, then you shall bless Yahweh Elohim for the good land which he has given you. Beware that you forget not Yahweh your Elohim in not keeping his commandments and his judgments and his statutes, which I command you this day. Lest when you have eaten and are full, and have built goodly houses and dwell therein, and when your herds and your flocks multiply, and your silver and your gold is multiplied, and all that you have is multiplied, then your heart be lifted up, and you forget Yahweh your Elohim.
Right, and that's what ends up happening, because we then start focusing on other things. Now we have these riches, we have those riches, we have these things. Now our attention is on other things. Now Yahweh starts to get shifted to the back. Then our personal issues start increasing, and we don't understand or see that little fork in the road where we start pushing the things of Yahweh back further and further, so that we can have more and more time to work on our personal things, but then can't figure out that why our personal things are never getting taken care of. Because you done kept pushing Yahweh's stuff further and further back. As it is written, take care of you the things concerning the kingdom, and the rest shall be added unto you. But that's not what we do. Go ahead.
Which brought you forth out of the land of Egypt, from the house of bondage, who led you through that great and terrible wilderness, wherein were fiery serpents and scorpions and drought, where there was no water, who brought you forth water out of the rock of flint.
Right. So what he did was bring them through some things that looked impossible to make it through, and then showed them how no matter what it looks like, I can still deliver you if you depend on me. I mean, you talk about getting to a place where there's no water, and you can hear water. You can smell water. You can tell when there's some water near. He lead them to a completely dry place so he can show them water out of a dry place. That is for a reason, so that they would learn to depend on him. Because what we had learned before was to depend on the people who ruled over us. They were where we got everything that we needed. See, captives don't have to worry about how they're going to get their next meal, or how they're going to do the next season or anything like that. People in jail don't have to worry about that. They listen to the bell, they know it's time to eat. They don't have to worry about going and getting in to eat. The food is already there. And then after a while, people become so institutionalized after going in and out of that system that they're more comfortable in prison than they are out in the free part of the world. Because now they have to make decisions. They didn't have to make decisions before. Go ahead.
Deuteronomy chapter 8 and verse 16. Who fed you in the wilderness with manna, which your fathers knew not, that he might humble you, and that he might prove you, to do you good at your latter end.
To do you good at your latter end. Our problem is we want the good right now. So then we're not willing to go through the things, to be humble, to be fed with manna, which our fathers knew not, that he might humble you in this period of time and prove you to see whether or not you're going to walk in those commandments or not. Then he will do good to you at your latter end. But the adversary, the devil, he offers you good right now. That's what the pull between Yahweh and the adversary. The adversary saying, I can get you good right now. I can take care of you before night out. Yahweh said, I'm going to do you good at your latter end. But I want to prove you and I want to humble you, so that when you do get that thing that you desire, you won't mess it up. Go ahead.
And you say in your heart, my power and the might of mine hand has gotten me this wealth. But you shall remember Yahweh your Elohim, for it is he that gives you power to get wealth, that he may establish his covenant which he sware unto your fathers, as it is this day.
Right. And if the adversary says, if you just bow down to worship me, all shall be yours, then he wants to intervene in Yahweh trying to humble you, improve you, to give you these things. The adversary, the devil, want to slide right in. No, I'll give it to you now. See, that's automatically set to cause a problem between you and your Elohim. See, this is the kind of things that even cause problems in houses where the kid will ask one parent for some candy and the parent say no. Then they go to the other parent and that parent say yeah. Now you got this schism in the house. Well, that's what the adversary do. He slide right in the middle. What Yahweh say he gonna humble you and prove you? No, you don't need that. Here you go. Here you go right here. Brand new shiny. Come put them chrome wheels on there. And they spinning. Look at that. There you go. That's yours. Right. He give it to you so he can destroy you with it. Go ahead.
And it shall be, if you do at all forget Yahweh your Elohim, and walk out after other gods, and serve them, and worship them, I testify against you this day that you shall surely perish. As the nations which Yahweh destroyeth before your face, so shall you perish, because you would not be obedient unto the voice of Yahweh your Elohim.
Right, and this is why we have the push of the televangelists saying that we are not to even make an attempt at keeping any of these laws because they have been paid to do a job, and that job is to make sure that we never figure out where our true strength lies. So if you look at your true strength as a negative point, you will never embrace it. And that's what we are being taught on Sunday morning, to run away from the true power that we have in Yahweh, which is walking in the righteousness of his word. Let's go to Leviticus chapter 23. And we're going to read verses 15 through 17.
And you shall count unto you from the morrow after the Shabbat, from the day that you brought the sheaf of the wave offering. 7 Shabbats shall be complete.
So now, after we're talking about, after we do these things of unleavened bread, we count, and you shall count unto you from tomorrow after the Sabbath, from the day that you brought the sheaf of the wave offering. So on the next Sabbath after our feast of first fruits will be now, and then you count 7 Sabbaths from there. This is what they end up calling Pentecost, because Penta is a Greek thing meaning 50. So 7 Sabbaths, 7 times 7 is 49. The next day is the day of Pentecost. And we've had Christian churches that kept this on the exact same day that we kept it. And the way you count it, 7 Sabbaths from the Sabbath after you offer your first fruit. So for them to be able to do that, they knew when Passover was, they knew when Feast of Unleavened Bread was, they knew when first fruit was, because they knew exactly what Sabbath to start counting from. So we have Sunday churches that knew all of that, but didn't keep it, but got to the point where they kept the Pentecost. Because understand, there were other things that happened on the Pentecost. The outpouring of the Holy Spirit. You have the ability for them to speak in these different languages. But of course, what they see is they spoke in tongues. So because people want to not understanding what tongues are, this becomes a big show for people to attempt to do. Go ahead, bro.
And even like what you were saying, that, you know, the Christian church is keeping the Pentecost on the right day. It also goes to show that they know when the Shabbat is, because this says it's the day after the Shabbat.
Right. So Pentecost will never be on the Shabbat. It's going to be the day after. And you count it 7 Sabbaths. So how you count 7 Saturdays but not know that it's a Saturday? That's pretty hard to do. You counted 7 of them, but you didn't know that that was the Sabbath. Wait a minute. So it lets you know that it's a game, but these are the things that our people, our ministers are being taught in school, in their seminary schools, and they are given a doctrine to follow. We passed by one of the Hebrew Christian organizations is what I call it. They, upon Passover night, they were, packed parking lot just like ours. Every other day we passed by there, ain't nobody there. So, Passover to, the Hebrew Christians has turned out to be like Easter. Everybody show up with some outfits, and then the rest of the stuff they don't deal with at all. How you keep Passover and understand the beginning of Feast of Unleavened Bread, and you don't have anything else that you're dealing with after that? But that's how you make a boatload of money. And that was one of the things that my elder fought against, doing those things to make money. But the individual that started that congregation that my elder ended up pulling out from, he's mega rich in doing those things in that way. So it caused them to prosper financially. But there's a debt that's going to be paid, like Yahweh says, to do you good at your latter end. Well, when you make all kind of twists and turns so you can have good now, then there's a debt that has to be paid at your latter end. Go ahead.
Leviticus chapter 23 and verse 16. Even unto tomorrow, after the 7th Shabbat, shall you number 50 days, and you shall offer a new meat offering unto Yahweh. You shall bring out of your habitations 2 wave loaves of 2 tenth deals. They shall be of fine flour. They shall be baken with leaven. They are the first fruits unto Yahweh. Now, these are the first fruits of the things that you have brought in. These 2 wave loaves represent the 2 houses of Israel. But then you also see that they are baked with leaven. Yahweh still accepts Israel even in our point of being with sin. This represents the children of Israel, both houses. They are still, these things are baking with leaven, and they are the first fruits unto Yahweh. Yahweh still accepts Israel in that state. But we still have to make a push and a attempt to be like the Mashiach and trying to be unleavened. We need to look at a few definitions when we look at this leaven, which is sehor, and it says barm or yeast cake as swelling by fermentation, leaven. So when you talk about that leaven, this agent that is then used to make something rise in Strong's, that is H7603. When you see the H, of course, that means that it is a Hebrew word when you're dealing with etymology and breaking down where those things come from. We had a question about what about wine that if they naturally ferment, then they're going to have this yeast, or they're going to do these things. When you break this down, it says remove the leaven out. If something naturally does something, then there's nothing for you to remove out. See, that there's a difference between something happening naturally and you putting something in it for it to do that. So that's what you're dealing with, even when you start dealing with wines or anything like that. It is that thing that was added to it, because they add things to wine in a lot of cases to make it ferment faster. So they do a whole lot of things so that they can do either make things have longer shelf life. It's all about their money, and it's all about their ability to be able to ship something from one side of the country to the other side of the country. See, when people have stuff right next to their house, man, you need to add all this stuff. You don't need to do all that.
No, you need to do that because you got somebody way in California and they making some money and shipping something way to Connecticut. That's what that's about. But when you remove all of these mega chain stores and these mega things and start having people dealing with those local markets like what we used to deal with, it's going to erase all of that. Because once we start even tasting fresh things, you're not going to want that other stuff anymore anyway. I used to think, you know, my grandmama was tripping. My grandmama wouldn't go to the grocery store to buy her fruits and vegetables. She used to go to this man on the corner with right beside the gas station. And I'm like, what, why are you going to this man? But see, I learned something. See, that old lady was used to real fruit, real vegetables. She was like, no, go to the vegetable man. Because she started sending me. She's like, boy, you didn't get this out of Kroger, did you? I said, yeah. Take that back, boy. What? I'm trying to hurry up and get this thing on with. You know, she's sending me on these errands. And it ain't like she asked me, to go on the errand. She tell me about the errand like she was doing me a favor. Elliot, I'm going to let you take me to go get some groceries. You going to let me take you? That is so nice of you, Big Mama, to let me take you. Yeah, I'm going to let you take me to go and get some fruit. Wow, thank you for letting me do that. I long to take you to go get fruit. But I've gone up there to that place, picked out some things, and that man said, hey, ain't you Lucy grandboy? Yeah. Put that down, boy. Your grandma don't get that. Get that over there. What? Them folks knew what it was you got, what type of stuff your family dealt with. We have lost all of that. But we're going to have to get it back. Go ahead, bro.
That was in there.
Let's go. Let's read the next one on unleavened.
Unleavened, H4682, matzah.
Matzah. So when we go and get these matzos by brand, understand what it is we're getting. Go ahead.
From H4711, in the sense of greedily devouring for sweetness, properly sweetness, concretely sweet, that is, not soured or bittered with yeast. Specifically an unfermented cake or loaf, or elliptically, the festival of Passover, because no leaven was then used. Unleavened bread, cake without leaven.
All right. Let's go to 1 Corinthians chapter 5. And we know that leaven causes things to rise or to be puffed up. When something is flat, it is then not puffed up, and thus, in the spiritual understanding of that, obedient unto Yahweh. So you have the part of being flat, which would be like one bowing down, and then you have something puffed up, which then means it is going to kick against the order. 1 Corinthians chapter 5, and let's start that at verse 1.
It is reported commonly that there is fornication among you, and such fornication as is not so much as named among the Gentiles, that one should have his father's wife.
You know, even when we get in the beginning of this book, before there's any kind of law, you read that there's something going on between Abraham and the Hamites, and so there was already a basic law upon the earth before there was a law given to the children of Israel. There was a certain amount of things that was just common. Go ahead.
And you are puffed up, and have not rather mourned, that he that has done this deed might be taken away from among you.
So now, puffed up is the opposite of unleavened. So now, you are puffed up and allowing this thing to go on. Go ahead.
For I verily, as absent in body, but present in spirit, have judged already, as though I were present, concerning him that has so done this deed. In the name of our Adonai Yahshua the Mashiach, when you are gathered together, and my spirit with the power of our Adonai Yahshua the Mashiach, to deliver such a one unto Satan for the destruction of the flesh, that the spirit may be saved in the day of the Adonai Yahshua.
Right. To deliver such a one unto Satan for the destruction of the flesh, that the spirit might be saved in the day of the Adonai. So once again, there's the thing of having good right now or receiving good later. Go ahead.
Your glorying is not good. Know you not that a little leaven leavens the whole lump? Purge out therefore the old leaven, that you may be a new lump, as you are unleavened. For even the Mashiach, our Passover, is sacrificed for us. Therefore let us keep the feast, not with old leaven, neither with the leaven of malice and wickedness.
Right. So now this leaven is not this thing of bread now. Now this leaven has gone on and taken another spiritual connotation that is about malice, wickedness, and anything that goes against righteousness. Go ahead.
But with the unleavened bread of sincerity and truth.
So now unleavened spiritually is sincerity and truth. Go ahead.
I wrote unto you in an epistle not to company with fornicators, yet not altogether with the fornicators of this world, or with the covetous, or extortioners, or with idolaters, for then must you needs go out of the world. But now I have written unto you not to keep company, if any man that is called a brother be a fornicator, or covetous, or an idolater, or a railer, or a drunkard, or an extortioner. With such an one, know not to eat.
Now, he is giving this instruction unto the Gentiles as they are then beginning in their walk and walking in the word. He's giving them these instructions, letting them know, because these things are going to fight against your walk. As you are trying to do things, these things are going to pull you back into that old life. But a lot of times, these are the people we like to spend our chief time with. And they pull us right down that slippery slope into all the things that Yahweh has told us not to deal with. Go ahead.
For what have I to do to judge them also that are without? Do not you judge them that are within? But them that are without, Elohim judgeth. Therefore put away from among yourselves that wicked person.
All right, let's go to Matthew chapter 16. So he says, your job is to judge the people from within, and Yahweh's job is to judge those that are without. Matthew chapter 16, and let's read verses 5 through 12.
And when his disciples were come to the other side, they had forgotten to take bread. Then Yahshua said unto them, take heed and beware of the leaven of the Pharisees and of the Sadducees. And they reasoned among themselves, saying, it is because we have taken no bread. Which when Yahshua perceived, he said unto them, O you of little faith, why reason you among yourselves, because you have brought no bread?
Right. So the leaven that he's talking about has taken a spiritual connotation. So as we keep these days of unleavened bread, we have to understand that this is more than just about the bread that we are not eating. This is about the constant push and walk to try to become unleavened, to try and be without that sinful nature that causes us issues. And it is a constant walk. We'll never be completely unleavened. It is a constant walk to try and get to. It is Yahshua that's going to put us in the point of completely being unleavened. So this is why we have these things year after year after year. It is a constant reminder, a constant resetting and beginning again, so that we can try and get these things together spiritually. Go ahead.
Verse 9. Do you not yet understand, neither remember the 5 loaves of the 5,000 and how many baskets you took up? Neither the 7 loaves of the 4,000 and how many baskets you took up? How is it that you do not understand that I spake it not to you concerning bread, that you should beware of the leaven of the Pharisees and of the Sadducees? Then understood they how that he bade them not beware of the leaven of bread, but of the doctrine of the Pharisees and of the Sadducees.
Right. Their doctrine is leaven. So then we have to consider the doctrine that we hear on the Sabbath versus the doctrine that is taught on Sunday morning. There is some leaven there within this other doctrine, because it does not fit the things that Yahweh has ordained Yeshua to put in place. Let's go to Exodus chapter 12. And when you deal with that, we have to remember what is written. I think it's in 2 Peter. It says, sporting themselves with their own deceivings while they feast with you. So you have one thing that is happening at one point when you even talk about dealing with the Passover and examining yourself. So then you have people who are then approaching the altar, praying about the issues that they are going through. And this is why it says examine yourself, because some will approach unto the altar, know that they have issues, and won't even consider that one bit, and still approach unto the altar like everything, because there's a part of us that we know is there, and there's a part of us that everybody else see. But you need to know that none of that is hidden from Yahweh our Elohim. Doesn't matter whether you've told man about it or not. Yahweh know what's there. And there's some things that we have to work on a long-term basis for us to get those things taken care of. Exodus chapter 12, and let's read verses 7 through 11.
Verse 7. And they shall take of the blood and strike it on the 2 side posts and on the upper door posts of the houses wherein they shall eat it. And they shall eat the flesh in that night, roast with fire and unleavened bread, and with bitter herbs they shall eat it.
Mm-hmm.
Eat not of it raw, nor sodden at all with water, but roast with fire, his head with his legs, and with the purtenance thereof.
Now, these were all of the ordinances about doing the Passover in the Old Testament, when, of course, that Passover was your sacrifice for your sins. The Passover that we eat at this time, this is not the sacrifice for our sins. So understand, all of the ritualistic part of that we do not have to deal with. Go ahead.
And you shall let nothing of it remain until the morning, and that which remains of it until the morning you shall burn with fire. And thus shall you eat it, with your loins girded, your shoes on your feet, and your staff in your hand. And you shall eat it in haste. It is Yahweh's Passover.
All right, so then we have to then deal with verse 11, and thus shall you eat it, with your loins girded. Now, when we get into certain parts, when we talked about, okay, this land is holy, remove your shoes. Well, we then have this part where this Passover is going on. He says, eat this with your loins girded, your shoes on your feet, and your staff in your hand. So you need to be ready to war as you are eating this. So this is a totally different setup than what we do at this point, because this was a different mindset. So we're going to have to deal with some of those things. Read the definition for gird up.
Azar, a primitive root to belt, bind, compass, bind up, compass about, or gird up with.
All right. Do the next one, girded.
Kagar, a primitive root to gird on as a belt, armor, etc. Be able to put on, be afraid, appointed, gird, restrain, X on every side.
Now, so when you're dealing with a longer garment that's coming down, if they then gird those things up and they either pull up the bottom to tie it up even tighter, now they're in a situation of getting ready for war. Because as they're moving, all of these things are going to either slow you down or cause you some problems when it's time to get ready to fight. But what you see now is extra covered part here on the loins as they, pull those things up and tie them up and get ready to fight. Let's go to Exodus chapter 28. So there's certain clothes that you have to, wear when you're getting ready to enter into conflict. And he told them, have your loins girded up, have your shoes on your feet, and have your staff in your hand. You need to be ready to move. That's not how we have to deal with things at this point. But I can tell you, having the wrong outfit on in a conflict can be real ugly. I mean, I got kicked out of school one time, me and the same dude. We got kicked out and they put us in like these same little schools. One was across the street from each other. And I guess he got kicked out. He got there one day before me. So I got there the next day, and I was, everybody had they want to be fresh the first day. And I had that fresh little Atlanta Hawks little jumpsuit, but it had the neck come up to right here, right? Woo, wrong outfit. And I had it like zipped up. And then me and the dude ended up getting to fighting again. Here's the problem. That little jumpsuit went up over my head and I couldn't get it off. Boy, by the time I got that off, I had knots all on my head. It done wore me out. Wrong war outfit. Wrong war outfit. It took me a minute for me to even wear that outfit again. I could see the knots on my head every time I saw it in the closet. I was like, boy, wrong decision, Jack. Exodus chapter 28 and read verses 36 through 43.
And you shall make a plate of pure gold and grave upon it, like the engravings of a signet, holiness to Yah. And you shall put it on a blue lace, that it may be upon the mitre, upon the forefront of the mitre it shall be. And it shall be upon Aaron's forehead, that Aaron may bear the lawlessness of the holy things, which the children of Israel shall hallow in all their holy gifts. And it shall be always upon his forehead, that they may be accepted before Yahweh.
Right, so when you talk about this mitre, this is a turban that the high priest wore. When you talk about who Aaron was and his position. So it's not something I normally even deal with because that was something that the high priest would wear. So I don't typically even wear a turban at all. Go ahead.
And you shall embroider the coat of fine linen, and you shall make the mitre of fine linen, and you shall make the girdle of needlework. And for Aaron's sons you shall make coats, and you shall make for them girdles, and bonnets shall you make for them.
Now, bonnets, they had coverings still for the underpriests, the ones who were under Aaron. So they had hair coverings, but it wasn't like the turban. So they still had their head covered, but they didn't wear the turban. And maybe, some people do that because they say, they're the head priest of that organization or what have you, but I don't. Go ahead.
For glory and for beauty. And you shall put them upon Aaron your brother, and his sons with him, and shall anoint them, and consecrate them, and sanctify them, that they may minister unto me in the priest's office. And you shall make them linen breeches to cover their nakedness. From the loins even unto the thighs they shall reach. And they shall be upon Aaron and upon his sons when they come in onto the tabernacle of the congregation, or when they come near unto the altar to minister in the holy place, that they bear not lawlessness and die.
Now, their lawlessness is their nakedness. There's a part that says you should not put going up to the altar steps, that as the brothers walk up, that their nakedness be not exposed as they're walking up toward this thing. So then there is a order that is still presented in how we present ourselves unto Yahweh. So now we can present ourselves in the wrong way that ends up putting us in a lawless situation. Because you find this thing where it says breeches, and then we get to what they used to call pants before is breeches. So you have these different levels of covering that are supposed to be upon men. Go ahead.
It shall be a statute forever unto him and his seed after him.
All right. Let's go to Job chapter 38.
Job chapter 38 and verse 1. Then Yahweh answered Job out of the whirlwind and said, Who is this that darkens counsel by words without knowledge?
Now, Job has gotten to a point after having so much placed upon him. I mean, like any of us, at some point is going to alter, your speech. Is going to get you to get to a point where you end up saying some things that you ought not to say. And there's a point where Yahweh then starts dealing with Job. Go ahead.
Gird up now your loins like a man.
Gird up your loins like a man. There's a certain part that you talk about a man being covered in a certain way. But we got this different being here with in the daughter of Babylon. We got all kind of culture and things that we've picked up from other people. So there should a man in skinny jeans should never ever be done. Did I say ever enough? Ever. See, there's something wrong right there. See, gird up your loins like a man. First of all, when we wear a covering, your top is supposed to come past or to meet your thigh, meaning that your loins, your private area, is covered. And see, we'll get to the point where corporate America told you that you're supposed to tuck your shirt in and put on a belt. Now you are exposing your loins. These are things that we as Hebrews don't do. So when brothers are looking for a shirt, that shirt has to cover your loins area. And you can't do like, where it covered my loins when I'm standing up. What, you ain't gonna sit down? I had to consider the same thing when my family come and they going out or they saying, okay, Daddy, can I wear, this dress? I know my little girl's got rumpelstiltskin. All right, so my thing is, all right, now that cover you while you holding it up, but I know there's some stuff in there that's gonna fit and it's gonna jack that up, So I need to see what that look like when you got it on. Now, are you gonna stand up the whole time? Okay, well, you gonna sit down. Well, let's see what it look like when you sit down. What if it don't pass them tests? You can't wear that. You can't put that on. And the same thing when you talk about, you know, these young men, you know, you guys watch this TV, you watch these things, and it is some kind of made to be some kind of little twisted thug culture to walk around with your pants hanging down. And this is why all of them in jail now, because they can't run nowhere. You can't get away from nobody with your pants down. The big fat donut eating cop can catch the skinniest brother, cause he can't run with his pants down. I mean, you ought to be ashamed if some big donut eating dude catch you in between snacks. All he gotta do is wait. As soon as you get to the first fence, now you got a problem. How am I gonna jump this fence and hold my pants up? See, that's the problem right there. You're supposed to be able to levitate over a fence. You hit that thing, pow, hit that with two hands, pow, you gone. Well, you know what? When you need them two hands to hold your britches, boy, that fence like death. That you getting, the closer you get to that fence, you're like, boy, I'm about to die. Because it's going to be a problem when you get to that fence. And let me tell you something. Brothers encounter issues with police, whether they've done anything or not. We're talking about people in regular traffic stops that have died, and they haven't done anything wrong. So when he says, gird up your loins like a man, you need to be able to move. How you going to move with your pants hanging down? And then you look at the twisted mindset that we still trying to be cool in our own damn house. Who gonna see you? You see folk walking down the street, they ain't nowhere but going to their own mailbox, and they sagging. Who's seeing you going to the mailbox? Go ahead, bro.
For I will demand of you, and answer you me.
Let's go to Isaiah chapter 20.
$731.
Okay. Y'all giggling for? Isaiah chapter 20, and let's read verses 1 through 4.
In the year that Tartan came unto Ashdod, when Sargon the king of Assyria sent him, and fought against Ashdod, and took it. At the same time spake Yahweh by Esaias, the son of Amoz, saying, Go and loose the sackcloth from off your loins, and put off your shoe from your foot. And he did so, walking naked and barefoot. And Yahweh said, Like as my servant Esaias has walked naked and barefoot 3 years for a sign and wonder upon Egypt and upon Ethiopia, so shall the king of Assyria lead away the Egyptians prisoners, and the Ethiopians captives, young and old, naked and barefoot, even with their buttocks uncovered, to the shame of Egypt.
So your buttocks uncovered is your shame. We show our buttocks and think it's our coolness. Now, see, that's all fine and dandy until Yahweh make you do it. See, what you find out about this is people want to do it because they've accepted this twisted culture. But when you get in the wrong setting, and Yahweh said, no. Remember, the people wanted flesh. Yahweh said, I'll tell you what, I'm going to give you flesh, but I'm going to give you so much that it shoot out your nostrils, right? So he said, all right, I done had enough of it. So when you start messing with this little stupid culture, and Yahweh said, no. Go ahead and let your pants sag. No. Pull the drawers down too. No, pull down both of them. No, matter of fact, take the pants and the drawers off. Now just walk. See, then people go, no. Don't cry now. No, walk your little butt naked self. Just keep on walking. What's the matter? Oh, it ain't cool no more? No, I just wanted to show the butt. I didn't want to show the front. No, show the front too. And I hope it's cold. I hope it's real cold. We have a culture, man. And we have to consider what it is we do. So when you talk about this thing of becoming unleavened, there's a level of that for each and every generation. And that young generation, y'all gonna have to fight this right here. At least that angel come and see you with your butt hanging out, and he go ahead and pull them draw down a little bit farther and smack you on that buttocks, and then we'll see if you still happy about showing your tail all over town. See, it's one thing when that angel says, keep your conversation honest, and it also says some of you have entertained angels unawares. What you gonna do the day that the angels show up to one of them little places you hanging out with, and he see your butt hanging out? What you gonna do? See if you can explain what we read in the oracles. Beware of him, he will not pardon your transgression, for my name is in him. And then when stuff start happening to us, we think it's unfair. Why is this happening? Right. That angel done got tired of looking at your behind. So consider, each one of us got a level that we need to work on to try and strive for in being unleavened. And it's just not about us separating from bread this week. It is a spiritual practice in getting the leaven out of our hearts and our minds. That's all that we're going to do for tonight. Enjoy your feast. Shabbat shalom.
Shabbat shalom.